just a reminder once again, as has been done for much of the spring meetings, the meeting is being videotaped. The purpose of that is to be able to make it available on the website to members. 75% of our members are out of the area, so for them to be able to see, in fact, what we are doing within the branch. So so that you are aware of that. We have a bit of a business meeting today with a number of items on the agenda that is all of the conference of recent weeks, and I'm just going to go through those. It won't take long, but it should be information that you need to know, I think, at this point in time. So I put at the front registration desk there a number of flyers about a program that's being offered at the Windsor Community Museum on May the 24th, rather. It's a Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. With Christine Woodcock and her expertise. She's the chair of the Scottish SIG with OGS, and she will be speaking at the museum in regard to searching for Scottish ancestors. So there are flyers there if you're interested, and we hope you can attend. I'd like to see good representation from our branch at that session. She's very good. I've heard her speak before, and I think it would be an interesting afternoon. So that's one of the items. Cindy, did you want to read a thank you letter that we received as a branch from the LDS?
Sure.
Thanks.
Not sure if people know, but we've been holding our executive meetings at the Latter-day Saints. They've graciously offered us a room to hold those meetings. So as a thank you, the branch donated to them some of our hard copies that we had extras of, and they just sent us a thank you letter, and I'll just read it to the board of the Essex County branch. We would like to thank you for the wonderful donation of the many records that you donated to our center. We will put them to good use, and we'll be happy to let our patrons know that the Ontario Genealogical Society Essex branch is alive and well. We will be happy to encourage our people to come and visit and see the library and all that it has to offer, and tell them all about your collection. We wish you continued success as you grow and continue to offer to the public a wonderful way to research the Canadian history. Thank you. That was on behalf of the Latter-day Saints.
Thanks very much, Cindy. Okay, conference, as I said, has just ended recently, and there were a lot of significant and important bits of information that came out of that conference. And I'm going to ask Cindy once again to talk about, she sent us a real to-do list for today, I'll tell you, to talk a little bit about the scanner.
I'm not sure if everybody's seen the device at the back. It's a book scanner. While we were at conference, we had the opportunity to view it, have a demonstration. It is for scanning bound books so that you don't have to take them apart, which is fantastic because nobody wants to be messing with the books and tearing them apart and destroying them. Works fantastic. David probably will give us a demonstration a little bit later. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the scanner, since you graciously donated to Essex branch the monies to purchase the scanner? So that scanner is the Essex branch scanner. That was very gracious. Use it. So.
Cindy, don't go away. You have a number of things that you mentioned we should be identifying and talking to people about tonight.
Yeah, Pat, Deborah, Fran, Michelle, David, we all attended conference, 2014 Niagara. It was really good conference. It was the first conference that people were able to stream into as well if you couldn't attend. So that was a milestone. It was really good. 2015 is going to be held in Barrie. So if you have an opportunity, it's well worth it, whether you're a brand new genealogist or whether you're seasoned. There's something for everyone. There's lots of networking, there's lots of workshops, there's tours, there's a huge marketplace that you can buy materials, and just lots of networking and sharing. The OGS, or you want me just, the things, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I gotcha. If you haven't had a chance to check out the OGS main website, I guess, remember, and people have been screaming, it needs to be more user-friendly, it needs to be updated. It's up and going. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's really user-friendly now. It's very eye-appealing. They did a really good job. So if you haven't been there lately, go back and check it out. I said this last month too, the monthly webinars that OGS is hosting for OGS members are free. They're well worth it. If you're not taking advantage of these, you're missing out. That's part of your membership, so jump on board and start watching the webinars. They're archived as well, so if you don't happen to be available to watch them at night, they're being broadcast. You can always go to the archives. Facebook. We have a Facebook group. Join us. It's a wonderful, we have so many people on there now that are chatting and helping each other, so it's a really great way to spread the word about OGS and the branches, and just to get on there and just get some information and share your pictures, and it's just a nice networking. So, that's it for me.
Okay, thanks very much, Cindy. Lots happening, and it's really worthwhile it's almost difficult to try and keep track and get involved in all of the different options there, but it's wonderful that they are available to meet the needs of whatever your particular interests and communication styles are. We have an award to present tonight, and I'm going to ask Deborah Honor to do the honor.
Okay, to give you a little bit of a history of this award, it's called the Dr. Dawn Brearley Genealogical Essay Award, and it's open to secondary students in grades 11 and 12. And on the website for the OGS, you can go on there and see all the guidelines. I have printed off a copy if you want to have a look at it afterwards, but I'm not going to say what it all is. We've had this award for about 4 to 5 years. It has only been handed out once before. This is only the second time that someone has won this award. The award is $500, which means they have to work pretty hard to get this award. With being on the OGS board, we get to hear what's going on with the awards, of course. And the one person who won it was a young fellow up around Sudbury who happened to have been on the old TV shows Ancestors in the Attic. So it's somebody who was very interested in doing his family genealogy. And we are lucky enough tonight to be presenting the second time this award is being given out to somebody from LaSalle, from our own area. And I would like to call upon Chelsea Malash. So on behalf of the OGS, I would like to thank you for giving us your essay. It must have been very good. There was talk at the last board meeting that they're hoping to work with you to maybe get it published in the Families Magazine, and I hope you get the chance to go through that process. I've won a different award twice, the second prize, and going through the whole process of having somebody else edit your work is a really good way of learning how to write better. So congratulations. Now, can you tell us what the story was about?
Actually, the story was about, I was actually just looking into my own family history. My grandmother is actually very interested in documenting the history as she gets older, and I was helping her out with that, and we had found some different stories involved, and obviously you get more interested in it and you start looking around. And I actually was introduced to this award at school around the same time. It was just very fortuitous that was happening, and I started thinking about what topic to write about, and I basically just wrote about my own experience as a beginner in the genealogical research field, looking into my family history and actually having the availability of this vast online world that is new to genealogy, but is in some ways a little bit, it just, you get lost on it sometimes. And it was just, my paper was kind of critical in the fact that as long as you have $5 to spend, you can just keep clicking. So that was a whole section of it. It was really interesting to be able to write that down into words, and it was a good experience. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
There are very few students who actually hand in essays on this. So if you have any grandchildren or children of that age, there is also one for the university level, which is also a $500 award. And $500 for that age group goes a long way. They don't have as much as those of us who work. So thank you again.
Okay, thanks very much, Deborah, and Chelsea, congratulations. We have a bit of branch business that we need to take care of, and I'm going to call on Maggie Patterson, our branch treasurer, to explain what it's all about and to carry on with that. Maggie?
As many of you know, if you are a member of Essex Branch and you received your newsletter, we are proposing a fee increase from $10 per member to $12 per member, and from $12 per family to $15 per family. That is paid along with your OGS membership and entitles you to all of access to all of our branch documents, anything we have on our pay-per-view, which is not running quite yet, but it will be. Like everything in genealogy, we move slowly. Our last branch increase was in 1986. That's 28 years ago. Our bank balance is okay, but postage is going up, technology is costing us more, even though we've been wonderfully blessed with a scanner. We did have to buy a laptop. So our costs are going up. You must be a member in order to vote on this issue, and I have to write up a rationale and send it off to head office along with our members' vote on that. So I would like someone who is a branch member to make a motion that we increase our branch fees from $10 per individual to $12, and $12 per family to $15 per family member. Cindy and Jim will second it. Branch members, anybody, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank
Do you
you.
need a count on that?
Yeah, keep your hand up for the
Ask her to pull us over here. Let her count first.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Thank you.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie, and thank you, branch members. I think Maggie says in today's, since it was 86, I think things have changed quite a bit, and it's a very modest increase, but it will be helpful as we move more into the technological age, for sure. Okay, I think that basically finishes the business portion of the meeting, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce to you this evening as our featured speaker, Wayne Vizniowski from London. Wayne tells me he is the chairman of the London Middlesex branch of OGS, and he's well known in this area for a lot of his computer training activities that he does, and he has background as a teacher. So when the opportunity was presented itself to invite him to the meeting tonight, we certainly took advantage of that, and he has graciously agreed to come. His topic is most interesting and in some ways timely. He's going to speak to us on researching in the Ukraine. And I think that it becomes a little broader. I've spoken to Wayne about this as well. you know, we talk a lot about European ancestors and so on. But I know that there are people in our branch whose ancestors came from Eastern Europe, of which Ukraine is one of the countries. So it seems like an ideal opportunity to find out, is there any difference in researching in that part of Europe as opposed to, say, Germany or Britain or whatever. And so he can speak from personal experience because as he researched his own family in the Ukraine, he went to the Ukraine and spent some time there as part of his research. And he's going to share those thoughts and ideas with us tonight. So would you please welcome Wayne Vizniowski.
Thank you, Jim. As a way of introduction, I was born in Saskatchewan, and I was only 4 or 5 months old when we moved to Hamilton. And my dad was one of 8. Their parents were both from the Ukraine. And of course, so I grew up in Hamilton, and all the relatives were out west. And then two of my dad's sisters ended up in Kitchener, but no. So my mother was not Ukrainian, so I never learned to speak Ukrainian at all. And but I started doing my mother's side of the family in 1983, and then one time we were visiting in Saskatchewan, my uncle suggested that we should dig into their side of the family. So we started doing that, so we were talking to them at the farm in Saskatchewan. And the information they gave us that my grandfather, Michael Vizniowski, arrived in 1905. This is sort of verbal, what I received at first. He married in New York State, come to Canada about 1911, worked for M&S, Manitoba, Saskatchewan Coal Company. They also farmed. Usually they'd farm in the summertime and then work in mines in the wintertime. They farmed until 1930. They moved down to Portal, which is down right on the border with North Dakota. North Portal is Saskatchewan, and Portal is North Dakota. And while they were there, he died of cancer, and then my dad's oldest brother and the family, they moved over south of Oxbow, Saskatchewan, which wasn't that far. And one of the things we were told is that my grandparents met on the boat coming over from Europe. Well, the next thing we found was a history book written for Oxbow, Saskatchewan. And it clarified something a little bit that they came to Canada in 1907, or came to North America in 1907, which is true. And supposedly he went out to Saskatchewan and then went back to Coes, New York, and then got married there. The oldest son was born there. Supposedly he had a sister there, which I still haven't been able to locate, and I'll show you why a little later on. And then they come back to Saskatchewan, and the next 7 children were born in Saskatchewan. So my dad and mom and I were all born in a little town called Bainfate, Saskatchewan. Were you in Bainfate too? With me is my wife and a friend and my cousin who's related on the Ukrainian side. And she was born out west too. So one of the documents we found on the farm, they thought it was a passport. Well, I guess it's kind of a passport. It was a travel document that was written in German and Polish. It was a little narrow booklet like this, lots of pages on it, but there was only 2 pages that really interested us. This is the one for Grandma, Tekla Stangert from Kaputs in Tarnopol, part of Galicia. And I'll show you a map later on, but they were in the Galicia part in Austria, where the eastern part of Ukraine was in Russia, and that's where all the turmoil is going on right now. And then the second page gave some details. She's born in 1886. I'll explain that these are a little better. I should have had these in the other order. So my grandfather's Michael Vizniowski, and how come it's Vizniowski there and we're Vizniowski? Well, it got changed as Ellis Island, as we've all heard, and it didn't. It got changed when he went from North Dakota into Saskatchewan. And my grandfather couldn't read or write. What's your name? Vizniowski, because they pronounced the W as a V, and whoever was writing down wrote V-I-Z, and that's what we became. So he was from Bilogorska, near Krvoik in Ternopil, Ukraine. And at the time, my wife was working in an engineering firm, and there were some Polish engineers there, and they translated the document. Now, so here it says he was born in 1889. I can't sort of read all that, but what's it say, Mary Ellen? It's your writing.
Greek Orthodox?
Greek Orthodox.
Or Greek Catholic?
Yeah, Greek Catholic. Yeah, medium height, round face, gray eyes, blonde, face in proportion, medium build, blonde hair, beard, nothing unusual, and down the bottom it's can't read or write. That this right here, can't read or write.
So they could put anything down if they wanted, you
Yeah.
never know.
One of the other things we found at the farm was a handwritten marriage certificate, because they were married in Coes, New York. I guess Grandma had the priest write out a certificate saying, to prove that they had been married there. And of course, this was our first clue. So it's Michael Vizniowski, legitimate son of Jonas and Anastasia Reimer from Heroic. You'll see it written as G and as H, Heroic or Heroic, and it's Haverovitz now. Again, I'll cover that later. And then Tekla Stanker, legitimate son of Michael, and Julia Humanek, which comes out Humanek from Kaputz. And they were married the 30th of January 1910. And she got this the 29th of August 1911, probably just before she left Coes. Michael had gone ahead of time to Saskatchewan, I guess, to get a place to stay, and then she and the baby came after. When he got, my dad said it was skin cancer, but anyway, it went in and he had a big sort of lump on the side of his face. He didn't have a Polish passport, so he went to Regina and signed this affidavit in lieu of that, so he could go to Rochester, Minnesota for treatment for his cancer. Now the story is, and I've never been able to prove it, that he went there in the springtime and he got to Rochester, the hospital, and it's going to cost you so much money. We don't have any money. So he went back home, and then after the harvest, they sold some grain, and he went back. Well, you should have come sooner. It's too late to save it now. So whether it's true or not, that's what we were told. And also, he mentions in here he came to the United States and came to Canada, went back, and then returned to Canada. One of the things you have to look at when you're doing Ukrainian research is, what language is the name transliterated from? Whether it's Ukrainian, Polish, Russian, German, Austrian, Latin, Jewish, or it was in Cyrillic. So the different spellings of the names depending on which transliteration. And one of the things that I tease my wife about is the nationality of the person writing out the name. You'll see in one of the census records, and I actually looked, it was a Scottish name, the Scottish census taker, and I'll show you what he did for the name. And again, location of the town, it depends on the time period. Because remember, Ukraine wasn't a country until 1992, when the Iron Curtain came down. it was always a Ukrainian language people living in this area ruled by somebody else. And of course, Poland didn't exist for over 100 years. No, they were overruled by Austria, Germany, or Russia for the most part. And, time period, names changed with whoever was there. Spelling varied, the language spoken. And it turns out, I guess my grandparents actually had a bit of Polish dialect with their Ukrainian, but they were definitely Ukrainian. So Michael, Vizniowski, and that's how he spelled Vizniowski in Cyrillic. And then his parents, his father's name was Jonas, which is John, or in Russian it's Ivan. And then Anastasia Reimer was his wife's name. And then Tekla, a couple ways to spell Tekla. And then Stangert, which is, from what I can gather, a German name. When they arrived in Ukraine, I have no idea. The town, Roboy, Hammerwitz, which is what it's known as now. Of course, that's what the road sign reads when you pull into town. And the same with Kaputz, where Grandma was from. And of course, the district, was part of Galicia. And the Ukrainians, they refer to as Ruthians, or whatever. And again, Ukraine, spelled in different translation, and then in Ukrainian. Now, over there, they have what we call oblasts and rayons. Oblasts are actually the province, and I'll show you a map of them on, and the rayon is the county. So you'll have Ukraine, oblasts, or provinces, and then counties, and then the villages and the cities within it. There's the Ukrainian alphabet. You can download that off the internet anywhere. I think there's 31 letters or something different. And I haven't even tried to master it, this is my grandfather's death record. I acquired it, and it gives me a whole lot of nothing. Name of the father, unknown. Name of the mother, unknown. They're from Poland, and it was probably my dad's, or my uncle, the oldest brother, that gave the information. It's hard to read because it was a microfilm, a colored paper that was microfilm, and then photocopied. This is their marriage, actually, the state marriage certificate, and it doesn't give us too much more information. But they took out an affidavit of license to marry, and again, it repeats the name of the parents on here. So it certainly clarified it for us. Again, it's still the same type of copy. In 1940, the Canadian government did a census or an inventory of all the citizens of Canada. They wanted to find out what they were done, what people could do, and as far as whether they could conscript them into the army or whatnot. So this is the one for my grandmother. I think it was a price. I think it was about $50 to get this certificate. But you notice they said she's from Austria, from Turnfile. That's what Tarnopol sounds like to somebody that doesn't speak Ukrainian. So Turnfile, she came in 1907. She's Austrian. She can speak Austrian and Ukrainian. And I don't know I guess Austrian is basically German. And she's been mixed farming for 25 years, so that's how long she's been in Canada. So again, sometimes it can be helpful, but in this case, it certainly wasn't helpful for me. Then the Ellis Island records come on when I had dial-up internet, and it took me hours to get these documents. But, so this is Grandma, Tekla Stanger. So she was Austrian or Ruthian from Kaputz. She arrived in February 16, 1907, so that jives with what was written up in that Oxbow history book. She was single, she was 20 years old. She came on the ship called the Gertie, and she left from the port of Trieste. If you know where the boot is of where Italy is, you go up around there towards Yugoslavia and that way. It's sort of right up in that area there. And here's the information that was on the LSIN record. I transcribed it out. So she left from Trieste. She was Austrian. So she was 20, age 20, female singer, labor, region rights, Austria. She was Austrian and Ruthian from Caboose. She was going to Troy, New York. She paid for the trip by herself. She had $18 cash on her. She's never been in the States before, going to this Stefan Mazurek. And I haven't been able to find him at all. He lived on 4 Center Street in Troy, New York. 5 foot 3/4 inch tall, so she wasn't very tall. Fair complexion, fair hair, blue eyes, and born Caboose. And that's the ship Gertie that she came on. It's not very good, but it's from the Ellis Island site. And we had heard, and her father came over on the same ship with her. And the net result was he didn't like it in North America, so he went back to Ukraine. But he was on the same ship with her. And Michael Vizniowski, he was Austrian or Ruthian from Gravois. He came over 12th of March 1907. So did they meet on the ship coming over? No. And he was on the ship Pretoria from Hamburg. So they were on 2 different ships from 2 different months from 2 different ports. So no way they met on the ship coming over. And when I started researching that, I found 2 different birth dates for him out in Saskatchewan. And I think the reason there was two different birth dates because he was only 16 when he came over. She was 20. So when they got married and things like that, they evened out the ages a little bit. Usually it's the women that do this, but this case do it. And so he's 16 male. He couldn't read or write. And here was a surprise. He was supposed to be going to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is a coal mining area in Pennsylvania. And he had no continuing ticket. He had $16 on him, never been in the States before. Going down to this Elias Patchout. Again, I've never been able to find him. And on the ship, there was 2 other people from Gravois, this Maria Galmander and Jan Reimer. Well, Jan Reimer could be a cousin because his mother's maiden name was Reimer. And when we were over in Ukraine, they said the 2 most common names in that village was Reimer and Vizniowski. And but I've never been able to identify these people that where they were going to yet. Then later on, the Hamburg records came out, and I found him there. So he departed 23rd of February 1907. What was it, March the 6th or something? He got into New York. So he's 16, and all the other information there. But again, there are some Hamburg records that survived. So you got somebody coming over from Ukraine. And that was the ship that he came over on. And also a couple other people came over. This is my grandmother's sister, Sophie, who was Sue's grandmother. Now I've been after Sue because I haven't transcribed it here, but on the information it said, "Who paid for your way?" It said my sister, so I'm trying to collect the fare, And they talked about my grandfather going back to Coes because a sister lived there. Well, I did find one sister that came over to North America, but she didn't come over till 1920. So he wasn't visiting her in Coes, New York in 1907. She was too young then anyway. She would have only been 13 or something like that. So the next thing you start looking for is census records. Before they came online, my brother and I actually bought a CD with the New York Census on it. And when we looked up Coes, New York, which is up near Albany, there were just too many people the census wrote down as unknown, unknown. And we actually found that street where she was going to, but it was just all listed, all unknowns. No. In other words, the Ukrainian names, and they could, either the people that they were talking to didn't know or couldn't say the names, or I don't know. In the 1911 Saskatchewan census, I looked for them, couldn't find them. Grandma had that marriage certificate signed in August of 1911, so that would have been way after the census, so she certainly wasn't there. And 1960 census, 16 census, and this is the one with my Scottish census taker, and we say Vizniowski to somebody with a Scottish brogue, and they come out Vizniowski. And the only way I could find them in the 1960 census was I know he's looking for Michael, because there was 500 Michaels in Saskatchewan, but Tekla is not quite a common name, so I actually found him by using Tekla. Here it says Michael was born in 1888, and we'll see and it says where they live, and again, so I had Tekla there, and it's the four oldest boys. John, of course, three. And this John Zulu, I've heard that name talked about, but I guess he was a boarder at their farm at that time. Because I don't know whether you're familiar with the land records out in Saskatchewan. They have meridian lines. It starts in Manitoba, and then they count the ranges out, and then the townships up. And so when you want to find where they are, you got to find the meridian, count over how many ranges, and then up so many townships. And the township is approximately 16 square miles, 4 by 4. In the 1921 census, I could not find him at all. First, he's listed as Mike Vizniowski, and the only way I found them is I knew where they were living, and I had to go through page by page on the census until I come across them. And the surprise one here, the racial origin, Chinese. I still haven't figured that one out. And they were living on Section 30 section of Township 2, Range 6, west of the 2nd Meridian in Coalfields Township, and that's the same township that I was born in. So they live right just west of east of Bainfate. They're going the road to Oxbow. This is the only census, the first census that my father was born. He was born in 1917, so he appeared on that census. And this is my dad. There was 4 boys and then 4 girls, and the oldest girl was Nathalie, or we called her Nell or Nettie, but I don't know how they got that name out of it. So somebody spoke, I don't know what language, I didn't really look at the census paper was of that. So after getting a pretty good idea of, where they were from, so I started looking at different ones. So this is a website called Polish Roots, and you can find the different towns here I've highlighted, and it tells where the records are. So that's one site you could use if you're looking for Ukrainian, Polish roots. Another one is once we walked, guide to Jewish communities. The Jewish genealogy groups have done a lot of work in identifying towns and people, and go to their records to do searching. So I searched in here, and here's Verboy, and here's Kapoots down here. It says Kaczynski, and Kaczynski's just above it. So again, it tells you where it is. And there's another book produced by a fellow that lives out in Manitoba, called Brian Lenus, L-E-N-I-U-S. So Genealogy Gazetteer of Galicia. And unfortunately, I haven't, didn't highlight this one. Anyway, but it tells you where the Roman Catholic records are. It tells you where the Greek Catholic records are, and then the others, mostly Jewish. So if I go down here and find Tarnopol, so you can find the town, and one of the things, even though my relatives were Greek Catholic married Roman Catholics and vice versa, so you got to check both records. One of the things we had to watch out for is Grbovic there's about 4 or 5 places in the Ukraine and Poland with the same name, so you got to get the right one. In this case, it's yeah. And then after, no, so you know the records are there, you know where the towns are. You can even Google it, Google the town, and it'll come up. And this is just some more communities. And one of the things you got to remember too is what's the time period. So before the World War I, it basically was German, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and Russia. And he was in part of Galicia, which did the eastern part of what is now Ukraine, and the western part of Poland, or sorry, the western part of Ukraine and eastern part of Poland. And what's that, Lemberg there, which is Lviv, and Tarnopol is right, it stayed in Galicia, which probably was a savior as far as records go. And between the wars, then of course Ukraine is existing, and here's, I think that's Lviv, and that, or no, that's Kiev, isn't it? Lviv's over here, and Tarnopol's down about here. Now this is as it, well, almost was it today. Of course, Crimea is unofficially with Russia now. But Kiev, Lviv, so Tarnopol's down in here. So these are the oblasts, or the provinces of Ukraine, and Tarnopol is over here. So there's the province Tarnopol, there's a rayon Tarnopol, and then there's a city Tarnopol.
Are they all in the same area though?
Yeah, they're all within Tarnopol. The little lines in between are the different rayons or different counties within Tarnopol. And I pointed to the one that is Tarnopol Oblast. So here's the Oblast, and Grandma was from Kosovo rayon, and Grandpa was from Tarnopol rayon. And they're both, the city of Tarnopol is here, about 16 kilometers southeast was where Grandpa was from, and 16 kilometers southwest was where Grandma was from. My favorite map is this one. Was produced in 1910 by the Austrian-Hungarian. This is the website, and if you want to write it down later on. But this gives you a big map, and then what you do is you click on one of these sections here, and you get a map that looks like that. You still can't make anything out. Then you just click it once, and it opens up like that, and then you can scale over it. So this is Kapuns, where Grandma was from, and Denisov, which is another town right nearby, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So that's where she's from. So there's this river that goes down through here, there's a valley there. And then Grandpa, so Belakorska is the town that he was from, the Grbovic right here, and the records are all in Bavarov, which is right here. So they're all, these two towns are actually joined together as one municipality now. They were telling us when we were over there. Just a bit of background. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire, Galicia records, the records started in 1778. The Catholic Church, and primarily the Greek Catholic Church, was the official keeper of the state records. The records were supposed to be in Latin, in a set format. They named the parents, and for the case of birth parents, because there were so many children with saint names, they had to name the grandparents also. Ace, no, we don't get that here. The diocese to keep the record, the bishop copy to be made, and after 75 years, to go to Lviv, to the Bernardine monastery, which has been converted into the archives. And supposedly they have something like 12 kilometers of shelf space of records there. The other areas, the eastern part of Ukraine, most of them are in Kiev, and quite often they're in Russian, because that area was under Russia's rule there for so long. Now also the oblast, or the province, has some records, and the county has some records, but they're all supposed to go to the archives after 75 years. Very bureaucratic documents, a lot of the, the old Russian way, none of your business what the records are and things like that. But we did get to handle some records. And one of the persons one of the fellow that sort of led our group that we went over to Ukraine, he went to the church that his father was in, and they still had all the original records in that church. They'd never been turned over to the archives. So he was just in his glory when he got there. And he was going to offer to photocopy them all for him. And they're complaining that a lot of the new priests now, since the Iron Curtain come down, they had in the Greek Catholic religion wasn't suppressed anymore, so they had to get a whole bunch of priests in there, and of course a lot of them don't have the proper training for looking after records and things like that. This one, I should have updated this. They used to have family search labs, but basically it's family search place names. So if you look under Galicia, and Austria, Galicia, and it lists all the towns that they have records for. Because in 1992, when the Iron Curtain came down, they allowed the Latter-day Saints Church to go in and start microfilming the records. And in Lviv, it took them pretty much 10 years to microfilm all the records. Apparently they had one microfilm reader when they were there. So they're going through all these records. And now, of course, they've got 200 digital machines. They're digitizing all their records now. There's no more microfilm being produced. So you can go down and you can find the right place. So this is Graboic, and we want the one from, is it Vigilance? Graboic, yeah, this one right here. So when you click on that one, this gives you all the films for these records for that town where Grandpa was from. And with that, going through all those films, I was able to take him back 3 more generations. Now, the other side of the coin is that Grandma's town, when we were there, they told us that the town was completely destroyed in the Second World War. The scorched earth policy of the Russians and the Germans, I think something like 6,500 villages, towns, townships, hamlets, cities were destroyed in the Second World War. The only records I found were from 1860 to 1865, and none of the names that I was looking for were in those records. But with those records, so it was a standard format across there, so you had to figure out what it said. And so this was the marriage of my great-grandparents, Jonas Vizniowski and Marie Chelwick. So it gives the date over here, what record number. So it's Jonas Vizniowski, the son of Andrew and Marie Chelwick. And then Anastasia, the daughter of Michael and whomever. Here she was Catholic, male, and age was he was 24, she was only 16. Also down here it says that he was in the Austrian army in the 13th Regiment. Then the witnesses over here, and they were farmers, Agricola in Graboic. It also gives, this is not a birth record. I kind of did these, I tried to show the last part of it there. This turns out, probably part of the confusion was that my grandfather Michael had an older brother Michael who died 2 years old. So this was his birth in 1887, I believe. Yeah, 1887. And it says from the son of Jonas Vizniowski, who was the son of Andrei and Maria Chelowick, Anastasia, the daughter of Michael, Reimer, and Marie. He didn't give her maiden name, which is unusual because most of the time it did. Michael Vizniowski was one of the witnesses, and Paul, somebody, again, they were Agricola in Brevoort, so they were farmers in the area. So then this is the death record of the first Michael. He was 2 years old, so it gives the date of death, the date of burial, and the house number that they lived in. And when you get going through, you can almost pick out the family because they lived in the same house number, so you look at the house number. And then this is my grandfather's birth record, and all those different births, and he was born in 28th of April, 1890. We saw 88, we saw 89, we saw 90 for his birth, and so finally got his birth. And again, all of them, they list the midwife. And if you look at a lot of the births, it was always the same midwife. And again, Jonas, etc. And Michael Lukasevich and Maria, somebody, they even let women be witnesses to the baptism. They're really progressive. They said at one time that the literacy rate of Ukraine was right up there, high 90s, 95s. And the Russians went in and screwed things up because they wanted to all learn Russian and before they learned Ukrainian. And then two house 60s here. My great-grandfather and his oldest daughter died of cholera. And they were listed there. And this is his wife's death record later on. And what's that? She died on the 10th, the 12th of November, 1870. He was 50. Oh, yeah, okay.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
That all the records that he has just read were what we discovered at this
Bernadine
monastery in Lviv. And they actually brought the books to us, and we were allowed to paw through them,
No white gloves or anything?
No white gloves or anything. And mind you, we had to give up our passports when we went in. Write a letter in Ukrainian to ask what we, and then they gave us a form to fill out and ask what why we were there and all our information and what educational level we had and our passport number, which we didn't have to put on, so we had to go back into the hall and get them from the security guard. It was really quite a rigmarole.
Yeah.
That's where he got all that information. And we were there with Wayne, myself, and 4 of his siblings were all there, and we all had books.
How long did it take you to go through them all?
We just were there.
Just one day we were
We
there.
were there for a day.
And a lot of it verified what we found. We didn't really find anything startling new. One of the problems I mentioned with my grandmother's town is it was destroyed in the Second World War. So what I did is, on the Jewish Gen website, you can plug in the town name and you can get a list of all the towns that are within 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers, whatever you want. So then I started looking for records for those towns nearby, just in case, they've got, they had a baptism there, maybe they had a tiff with a priest, so they went to a different church or something like that, but nothing at all. Now, just about this time, in 1906, I come across this Toronto Ukrainian users group, and they were trying to plan a trip to Ukraine. And so I said, sure, I'm willing to go, and count 2 of us in. But they didn't get enough to organize the trip. So then they tried for next year, so then I went on a recruitment, and I got 4 of my siblings, so there's 6 of us. There was a couple from Alberta, and there was the fellow from, he's the president of the Toronto Ukrainian Genealogy Group, and one of their members, who is a professor at York University who speaks Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, and some German. Very handy to have when you're going there. And they also made arrangements so that when we got to the towns where we were researching, they had an interpreter there and a driver. In our case, because there were 6 of us, they had to get a van, so we had to pay for a van driver as well as interpreter. So what we did is we flew to Vienna, and then from Vienna we went on Ukrainian Airlines, which is operated by Austrian Airlines. We flew into Lviv, what used to be known as Lemberg in the German days. And then we went down to, so we researched there, we did a tour around there. They have what they call a Golden Horseshoe tour, see some of the castles and monasteries and things. Then we went down to Vizniowski, where 3 of the members of our group were doing research, and this is where they found one church that had never turned the records over to the archives. Then we went up to Ternopil, and then this is where we boarded this van and toured our towns. And then from there, we took an overnight train to Kiev, and then we all just spent 3 days in Kiev, and then we flew from Kiev back to Vienna, and then from Vienna home. So this was in June of 1907. 2007. Oh, that was a coincidence. My grandparents came over in 1907, and we went over there in 2007. I realized that after. Lviv is a very interesting town. It was one of the few towns Hitler moved into there and established his headquarters there. He didn't want a mess and destruction around him, so the city was preserved. There was no damage there. So it's a UNESCO heritage site now. And that's the only place we saw McDonald's. This is the... Pardon?
No Tim Hortons?
No Tim Hortons. We'll see if you can identify a couple other ones later on. So this is us in front of the Bernardine Monastery. Open that big door there. We had to go up these creaky, dark stairs that were really warm. No, for the hundreds of years, the monks and that going up and down the stairs wore them out, and we got into this room. So this was the lady that spoke all the language, and the rest of them were all my siblings, my wife. So Ternopil was there, so Kaputz is over here, about 16 miles, so we went to that town first, and we kind of wandered over here, we got a little bit lost, and eventually we got to Arbevik. So this is my grandmother's town. At one time I looked, the population, it said her town was 25, and the other one was 125. So this was our interpreter, and we were there, and we went to the graveyard, and a lot of the graves were the actual grave itself was nicely kept, but trying to get from grave A to grave B, nobody does any upkeep. It was brambles and thistles and everything else in between them, and weeds growing. But we saw this fellow over here, and he was there in the town. Everybody has their little garden plot, they have a barn, they have their cows, but they have no place to pasture them. So they'll take them out during the day and let them graze on the side of the road or at one of the abandoned collective farms, and they'll let them graze there for the day. So we went over and talked to him, and says, are there any standards in town? He says, just a minute. So he pounds a stake in the ground, and he ties the chain for his 2 cows to the stake, and he says, follow me, 100 yards down the road, 100 yards. So I don't know, we walked maybe a quarter mile down this gravel road. And I got a little video clip, but the sound is not loud enough on this. But this is Helena, and they went into the talk to her, and they come out, and she started talking about her father getting a letter from Dimitro. Dimitro was a younger brother of my grandmother and of Sophie's. And he didn't come over until 1927. And he wrote back to her father saying that, no, things are really tough here. You're probably going to have a better life, to stay in Ukraine. Little did he know. But she said she didn't know whether it was during the war or when, but he came in 1927. It was probably during the Depression, out in the Dust Bowl of the West, when he wrote to her. So that established she was family, and so she was 78. So she invited us in, and there's a bottle of vodka on the table. It was supposed to have been a festival in the town this day, so I guess this is why they had so much food. And the ladies got, wine there, and we had vodka, and of course, you know, a shot of vodka, you gotta throw it back. Needless to say, it's a good thing we had a driver that day. So we had this food there, and so this is, then her husband, he had taken his cow out to another part of town, so they sent one of these teenage girls here out to get him, and he come back. Of course, he comes in with his bottle of vodka, so we gotta have another drink. You usually had to have at least 3. And no, being good visitors, no, we had to comply. So this is her daughter and her 3 daughters, and then her son and his wife lives with them, and that's their 2 children, but the son and his wife were away that day, so we never did meet them. But she eventually did send me a picture of them. And there they were so proud, right out by the front door, there's this box there with a pipe coming out and a switch. And for running water, you run out of the house with your pail, you put it under the pipe, and you turn on the switch, and it pumps the pail full of water, and you take it back in the house. Don't know what they heated with, because we really didn't see any fireplaces in there, so whether they had electric heat or gas heat, I don't recall seeing any gas pipes around. But that was, in the small towns, that was the best we've seen for water supply. All the houses there, none of them are made out of wood. They've been bombed and burnt and shot at so many times. They're all made out of brick or concrete, and then usually parged, very decorative outside. I don't know whether that picture. She did some crochet, this cross stitch, and my sister said, "Oh, can I take a picture of it?" And next thing you know, she's rummaging around in her drawers, and she brings out 5 of these pillowcases and gives it to each one of us. So we have that at home. And the facilities. They have a bucket in there that somebody's got to empty every once in a while. Then we went over to her sister's place. This is her sister over here. She was 2 years older, so she was 80. And again, first thing you do, you're invited in, and the vodka, and you had brandy there? Yeah. And for some reason, they didn't offer the women the vodka. That was just for the men. No, I think most of it was homemade vodka. So we were chatting with them there. And this is their back garden.
Yeah.
On the left here is a wagon load of hay with a tarp over it. So this is her daughter. This is Olga, and this is her daughter. And 2 months before, she'd been to see the gypsies. And the gypsies told her that they were going to have world visitors. Well, the gypsies walk on water now as far as she's concerned, because these world visitors showed up. And they said, "Well, you should have been here in August," because this son was getting married in August. So no, we taken over stuff to leave with them, and then we gave him, but we took a collection and gave him some money for, we're going to give it to them. They said, no, give it to him. He was getting married. There's the group of us. You can see the house, the stucco on the side, patterns and things like that. And some of the designs up here, and some of them are even fancier than that. And they took us down the river valley down there, and they said, the Russians were on one side and the Germans on the other side shooting back and forth. This is when the town got shot. Never really had a chance to ask them how they survived, because her father was sent to Lithuania and they never saw him again. And the brother was sent to Siberia and they never saw him again. And I tried through the Red Cross family finding thing to see if they could find them, and they phoned me and said, no, we couldn't find them at all. They took us up into the clearing of this bush, and this is where my great-grandfather's house existed. Now, it's just a big field of weeds and stuff now. But this area, this clearing, was big enough that a house there in the yard, sort of on the side of the hill, so that's where my grandmother and Sue's grandmother would have grown up. And we found out later, when Helena passed away, took her sister 6 months to write us a letter. There's the original date on it and the date on the envelope, to tell us that her sister had died of cancer, and that our grandparents, she mentioned it, that had been murdered. The Michael that came over to North America and then went back, the 2 of them were murdered, and they were buried by the house, but then after the house was destroyed in the Second World War, then they took them and they interred them up in the cemetery. And my great-grandfather Michael Stanger had a sister that during the war, she was sent to Germany as a housekeeper for some German family. And then she came back and she lived in this house right next door, which was abandoned now and partly fallen down. And then here's the communal well in the middle of the road. So they had a crank there and bring the bucket up for water for the cattle or whatever. And this is Helena, this is her mother's grave there. No markings on this one at all. This stone probably had markings on it, but a lot of them, you see the cross and no markings. But you can see the jungle in between the different tombstones. Then we took off from there and we went and we stopped for the poppy field, and they kept telling us that they don't plant poppies, but they sometimes grow in nice even rows. But in fairness, they use a lot of poppy for baking and things like that. So this is my grandfather's village.
What month was that?
June. So Turnipole is 16 kilometers and Lviv is 130 kilometers from there. Yeah, I can read Cyrillic, but I can't. So this is the valley there, and my brother said, what a beautiful valley, why would they leave? But again, there's just not enough land, the old son's supposed to get their plot of land. And, there would have been Polish landlords there, and these guys were the serfs that worked for them. Much like Golden Country, I was going to say not around here, but around London and Woodstock. So we met these two ladies in the cemetery, and this lady, we ended up meeting in Turnipole the next day too. This is Andre Vizniowski, I think was a brother of Jonas's. Originally I thought it was the father, but it's not. He's born in 1881, so that was too late. There was a Vizniowski that came to the United States around Chicago area, and he died in 1980. And he sent money back to the town for them to build a community hall. And he said it was acted as a community hall for a while, and it was a little cafe, but it's abandoned now. But there's, up there in the top, there's a tribute to him. He provided the money for building it. But you notice everything's made out of concrete and stone. And so here's the church in town. Now it says 988, that's not when the church was built, that's when the Greek Catholic religion started, by the monks in the caves in Kiev. So they were celebrating 1,000 years of the Greek Catholic religion. Now this fellow here was a Vizniowski, and we just stopped there, and we hadn't been there a few minutes, and then his buddy pulls up, his granddaughter was driving a car, and he pulls up. But his wife had gone to Turnipole. And of course, he's the outside guy. He doesn't know how to entertain. So we ended up going over to this guy's place. And here's that one lady from the cemetery again. And beside the farm is this little building. You notice the rough brickwork. But you notice on the side there, they've got this the stucco on it, or parging. And then that's eventually what it'll be like. So inside, a little bit of a variety store. So they'll try and make money any way they can. And again, out under the cherry tree. Vizniowski means house by the cherry tree or cherry orchard, Vizhny. So my dad always we had 5 acres when we grew up in Hamilton, and always had cherry trees and that. So when I moved to London, I bought a cherry tree in the backyard. I figured I had to carry the tradition forward. But they gave us chicken soup and more beer, and the piece de resistance was your sallow. Anybody know what sallow is? It just slices of fat. But it was piece de resistance because they had fresh garlic to go with it. To choke it down, and I think that's why they drank a lot of vodka. And we couldn't establish with the records that I had if this guy was connected to us. But you look at his face and my brother's face, and I think they're from the same tannery. Just some pictures. This is when we're in Lviv. This is the Opera Hotel. Right across the road was the big opera house. And we always wanted to go in and do a tour. My sister was up early one morning, and she was walking around, and a guy walked in, so she walked in behind him and walked around, and the guy said, no, you can't come in here, and she just pulls up her camera like this, come with me. So he took her around the hotel, she took a bunch of pictures at the Opera House. But the street there on the weekend was cut off, no traffic at all, and it was a pedestrian. There's a great big sort of center strip. Anyway, a place I can think of, like Victoria Park in London, or down Gage Park in Hamilton. Here, a couple bought a new car, so the priest is blessing it. This was the train station that probably both of them left from. It wouldn't have been the original train station because it was destroyed in the Second World War, so this is what it rebuilt. The train pulls in, and we had a fellow there with us. And he said, all right, well, all your luggage here right beside the train. So when the train pulls up, the women get on, and then we just toss luggage up as fast as we can. It stops for 5 minutes, that's it. And of course, my sister, she's got 1,500 pounds of luggage. This is in Kiev. They don't park in the street, they park in the sidewalk. And down along here, there was a pickup truck with a Kansas license plate on it. But you gotta watch, you know. And there they had underground malls like they do in downtown Toronto or Montreal, and shops. Independence Square, where the Orange Revolution took place. Of course, it was quite peaceful when we were there. And where do you think that is? Whose pub? O'Brien pub. O'Brien's pub. This is a museum of history for Ukraine. We showed up here one day and it was closed that day because they were painting or something. And this is a linden tree. This is a steel beam here, and it's 1,000 years old. And then some of the street vendors, nice days, they're selling their wares, t-shirts and everything like that. And Stalin, when he tried to starve out the Ukrainians, this is a monument that went up after the Iron Curtain come down to him. Okay, which church is this, Marion? Apparently there's 16 kilograms of gold flake on these towers. The people live in little stone's house, but these churches were just immaculate inside. This is the Dnieper River, or the Dnieper River, I guess as they call it. They're building a new bridge across here. We still can't find the underground bridge that the subway train goes on. On the map, they called it an underground bridge. It was a tunnel. Apparently, Kiev was one of the first countries to have an underground, like a subway system. And this is Russia erected the statue. It faces Mother Russia in Moscow, of course, and the Ukrainians hate it. This was on the east bank of it's still part of Kiev, but a lot of construction going on at that time we were there. I think one time, I don't know how many we called it, 30 cranes we could see just from our hotel room. Some of the poor cottages along the river, just like we have here. And in 1910, Ukraine and Poland had the European soccer championships. This is one of the stadiums that they played in. We can see that from our hotel room. Okay, you know that, though. Baskin Robbins.
Okay, so how do you pronounce that?
Baskin Robbins. Originally, Kiev was built on 7 hills, so there were 7 princes that had these castles on these 7 hills. And this is what they call the Golden Gate, only the thing that's been restored or kept of all these 7 castles that existed around there at one time. Here where, again, they told us not to drink the water. Of course, making beer sterilizes the water, so we had to look after our health. Some of the houses you see in the countryside, partly under construction. They, they may work for a while, earn some more money, and do some more building, and, some of these, didn't have windows in yet. But again, it's all, masonry, no wood construction at all. Again, here's cutting the hay along the side of the road, the side, the long narrow gardens that they plant. Some of them will go over and use land on the abandoned collective farms.
Why are farms abandoned?
Well, that was the Russians' idea. And of course, they couldn't get them to work.
And politically, they can't decide who's going to get the land.
Yeah,
How to
they
divide
haven't,
the
they haven't
land.
allowed land ownership in that. It's, they just, until Ukraine gets its political system straightened out, and, what they should have done is let people buy land and, get established. And because people are still waiting for handouts like they got from Russia, they just had to go and show up and they would, get looked after. This is in a town called Rahoton, and apparently it's the only statue to a woman that's not a religious statue. And apparently she was a priest's daughter that was kidnapped by the Tartars and taken to Constantinople, which is whatever it is now. And she was one of the concubines of the Tartan, and she convinced them not to raid Ukraine, so she kind of saved them, so they erected a statue in her memory. There was a church there that we went to in this town, and it was all held together with wooden pegs and things like that, and it's quite unique. Ukrainian taxi. Well, they're taxi or something else too. Again, here's a coal-fired power plant, so they pollute just like we do. And they actually had bulk oil stored there, they had coal there, and they actually had natural gas going in. So Russia cuts them off natural gas, and they switch to coal or oil, whatever they can get. And here is one of the more progressive farmers. They had quite a few cows, so we actually had to stop and wait for the cows to cross the road. They're taking them from these fields on this side back home to be milked. No beef cow. We never saw a beef cow. They were all milk cows. And when it comes to eating, you get the bull calves. They would make for veal and pork, fish, and chicken. That was the first day night there. We went over in Lviv, and we went over. My brother ordered a steak, and the 9 of us were finished eating for an hour before he got his steak. Whether they had to go and find a cow to butcher or what. Now, the best picture that what did we do that for? Damn. I think when we got to Kiev, I had a steak one day, and it came from one of the stands. We're just about done here, but okay. There, the picture that I missed was one of the teenage girls chasing a wayward calf down the ditch while talking on cell phone. Their cell phones are big because they don't have the infrastructure for the landlines, so it's much cheaper to put up cell towers than everybody uses cell towers. Women walk into work in the morning, they'll be dressed to the nines. Nobody saves any money there because you put it in the bank and then the money gets devalued, so it's not worth anything. And these women walk to work in high heel shoes, like young women, in high heel shoes on these cobblestones, and Here we went down to Ivano-Frankovitz, and this is the other four were doing research, so we went on a tour and we stopped at this pub. And again, there they had a bottle of vodka with horseradish root inside it. And then, so they had a toast, and we called the cookout to congratulate. They put this table down there, the spread on the table, and apparently that was just the first course. They just kept bringing us food and bringing us food. And then of course, we wanted to congratulate the cook. So we called him out, And he brings his bottle of vodka out, so we've got to have some more vodka. And I can't remember the name of the town, but it's a Vizniowski museum, an Easter egg. And it's the one, I'm trying to think of the one in Alberta. There's something like 10,000 Easter egg, or Vizniowski there, from different regions of Ukraine and Poland and Belarus and places like that. And then there was a museum nearby, and some of everything, all the furniture that they do is all intricately carved, very talented. I don't know how I missed out. Again, they stoop their hay right out in the field. Sometimes they'll even cut a branch off, and then they'll leave the bottom. They'll get a big long branch, and then a couple of the side branches they'll leave on the bottom ones. Then they pile the hay on it so that the hay doesn't touch the ground, so it doesn't rot, so they reduce the spoilage. One time they're driving along, and here's a woman pedaling a bicycle with a great big bale of hay tied on the back of her bike, taking it in to feed the cows, in the barn and home. Again, here's typical, working out in the fields there, and the cows grazing here. Somebody had to stay with it. Quite often it was grandma that stayed with the cows for the day. This is the bottom end of the Carpathian Mountains. We went up and so they're really just kind of big hills here at this point. And most of the places had fences around them, either steel or brick, something like that. And here we're at the airport saying goodbye. Oh, you disappeared. Oh. So that's pretty well it. Any questions at all?
So it's like Ireland, you really have to know the little town that they came from.
Yes, yes. And that's the important thing, is to find out the town they came from. And when you hear the town names here, they can be misspelled or mispronounced so much. And we were lucky to find lots of documents at the farm. And I guess it's a good thing they're pack rats, I guess. But they hadn't thrown anything out. Because I've heard on my mom's side of the family, one of the grandmothers one time after her husband died, she says, "Oh, I got all these papers, nobody needs them," so she went out in the farmyard and burned them all. So it was really an interesting trip. Things were really relatively inexpensive, as far as, and we had good meals. Mary Ellen has celiac, so she has to have a gluten-free diet. So you don't have to worry, they either use sour cream or something like that for, sauces, and it really wasn't a worry. Now, some of us did get what we call the hen revenge, probably because we ate a lot of Gretzky salad. When you want to order a Greek salad, they should just ask for a Gretzky salad, and you get it. And of course, probably they'll be, washing them in water and stuff like that. Go to order and get water. Yeah, they like it with carbonated, so yeah, no gas. Any other questions?
When are you going back?
Well, once they quit fighting.
Okay, Wayne, thank you so much for a most interesting and informative talk this evening. I think we learned an awful lot, and I certainly myself that I didn't know about that area of Europe for sure. So thanks very much, appreciate it.
One thing I want to mention, OGS is in the process of setting up a European SIG, Special Interest Group, and it includes Eastern Europe and others. So if anybody's interested, I think they've got a Facebook page set up. Kathleen Daly, is it? She's with the Bruce branch, but she's involved with the Polish branch over there. She's one of the organizers behind it. So if anybody has any European ancestry, that might be benefit to join that.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of items regarding the future. Our meeting in June, two things. This is getting to be a Scottish time of year because we have the presentation at the Community Museum on the 24th. Our meeting in June, by the way, 6 o'clock start because of the summer hours for the library, will feature a presentation regarding the Scottish resources that are available at the University of Guelph. And we have a gentleman from there coming down to talk about what's there and what kind of research they have been doing in regard to Scottish ancestry at the University of Guelph. And as I mentioned earlier, my understanding, I've been told, that the University of Guelph, the resources that they have regarding Scotland, are the largest, actually, collection outside of Scotland. So it should be, and it's close. So if that's an area that you're interested in, you'll find out all about it in the meeting in June. And to continue our presentation regarding local resources, we will have somebody coming to represent and discuss the resources available at the Marsh Collection in Amherstburg. So if you have an opportunity to come, please join us for the June meeting for that. And just going a little bit ahead, September will be a rather special meeting. The council is planning that this will be essentially around the 35th anniversary celebration of the Essex County branch of the Genealogical Society. So we'll be doing some reminiscing, we'll be doing some information about how the branch evolved, and just generally celebrating our success. So you can look forward to that, and of course, as you know, we don't meet in July and August. So thank you for coming tonight. Debbie?
Both of those meetings will be an hour early.
Those meetings will be an hour early, September and June, 6 o'clock start, because of the summer hours of the library. So thank you very much. Appreciate your coming tonight. Hope you found it enjoyable and informative.